Hello, today I'll be doing an album re-ranking. This time will be for Trivium, one of my personal favorite bands. I'll be seeing them live for the second time, and that'll be next week in Seattle. Definitely really looking forward to that. It'll of course be with Both My Valentine for their Poison Ascendancy tour, celebrating the anniversaries of Ascendancy and the Poison. Love both of those albums, and yeah, doing VIP for both bands too, so gonna be meeting both bands. Definitely really stoked for that. Love both bands to this day, but yeah. For this ranking, we'll be going from worst to best. Keep in mind, this is just my personal ranking. You don't have to agree with it, but feel free to let me know your ranking in the comment section below. And also, if you haven't seen my re-ranking, my recent re-ranking for Both My Valentine, definitely make sure to check that out after this video right here. Now, at the bottom, pretty easy choice for me, but still a solid album though, and that is their debut album, Ember to Inferno. When it comes to the world of metalcore, I think this is one of the better debut albums out there. If I were to name some of my favorites on here, Pillars of Serpents is definitely one of my favorites. I even like the re-recording of that song that they did years later. I do also like If I Could Collapse the Masses. That's definitely another one of my favorites on the album. You also have the title track, which is one of the fan favorites off of here, and for good reason. Definitely another one of my favorites on the album. You do get some other pretty good songs on here, like Requiem and To Burn the Eye, but yeah, this has always been my least favorite from the band, but still, again, a solid album though. But yeah, that's where Ember to Inferno lands, right at the bottom, but again, still a solid album. But next in my ranking, we have their third album, their Crusade. This album definitely gets its share of Metallica comparisons, especially with Matt Heafy's vocal performance on this album. You definitely hear some James Hetfield isms, which makes sense. I mean, James Hetfield is definitely one of his big inspirations, and I mean, hey, can't go wrong with James Hetfield. Metallica, definitely another one of my favorite bands. But yeah, the Crusade, this has always been fairly low in my ranking, but still, I do think this is also a good album. Some of my favorites on here, Anthem, We Are the Fire, definitely a solid anthem for them. You also have Becoming the Dragon, that's another one of my favorites, maybe one of their best songs. You also have To the Rats, which goes in a more thrashy direction, definitely another one of my favorites on the album. And definitely one of the more underrated when it comes to their singles in general. I really like To the Rats. You also get some pretty good deep cuts on here, like Tread the Floods and Sadness Will Sear. I also like Detonation. That's definitely another one of my favorites on the album. And then you also have the song The Rising, which I know the band themselves are not big on this song. I remember them mentioning that in an interview. I even think that song is all right. Is it one of the best songs on here? Not really, but still a decent track though. But yeah, The Crusade, good album. Not one of their best, but still good though. But next we're moving to an album that is another album in their discography that gets its share of flack, especially with the no screaming thing. And that album is Silence in the Snow. This was not signed in person. I got this signed copy from a record store actually for around 12, 13 bucks, somewhere around there. But either way, picked it up anyways. Definitely cool to have. But yeah, Silence in the Snow. I am a defender of this album. I know there are people that would put this at the bottom or close to the bottom. But yeah, still not one of their best, but I personally really dig this album. I seem to enjoy this album more than some people. But again, I am a defender of this album. I think this album shows that Matt Heafy vocally definitely has a great singing voice. And yeah, I think his vocal performance is one of the big highlights of this album. Some of my favorites on here, of course, the title track, Blind Leading the Blind, which is one of the heavier songs on here. That's another one of my favorites. I think you get some pretty underrated deep cuts on this album, like Breathe in the Flames, which is another one of the heavier songs on here. I also like Rise Above the Tides, definitely another one of my favorites. The Ghost That's Haunting You has always been one of my favorites on here too. You also have Until the World Goes Cold, which is one of their biggest songs. But yeah, Silence in the Snow. Still really dig this album. Maybe not high in the ranking, but still, I do think it is actually pretty good. The next one, moving to Vengeance Falls, which is of course produced by David Draiman of Disturbed. I mean, I remember seeing some people say that they're making Disturbed comparisons, and I can really only hear Disturbed in this album maybe in only one song, and that's about it though. And that song is To Believe, more specifically the verses when it comes to like the vocal cadences, but that's really it though when it comes to hearing anything that sounds like Disturbed on here. But the rest of the album still feels like Trivium to me. I mean, you do have one of their biggest songs on here, that song of course being Strife, definitely one of their big anthems, and for good reason. You also have No Way to Heal, which honestly that might be one of my favorite Trivium songs. I really like that song a lot. Love that one. Through Blood and Dirt and Bone is another highlight off the album for me too. Brave the Storm, pretty good way to open up the album. But yeah, Finish Falls, pretty good album actually. But next we'll be moving to What the Dead Men Say. I got this signed copy from the band's online store at the time when, of course, it was something you could pre-order. But yeah, What the Dead Men Say. Of the albums with Alex Ben, this one's probably my least favorite, but that's not really saying much because I still think this album is still pretty good. Some of my favorites on here, Catastrophist, which was of course the first single, definitely one of my favorites. You also have Sickness Unto You, which might be a contender for maybe being my favorite on here, and maybe one of their most underrated songs. I really like that song a lot. Definitely one of their best in general when it comes to their more recent output. Amongst the Shadows and the Stones, another one of the heavier songs on here. And then you also have The Defiant, which definitely gives me some Ascendancy vibes for sure. But yeah, another pretty good album for Trivium. Lands more towards closer to the middle of my ranking, but still pretty good though. And then we have another pretty strong album for them, their most recent album, In the Court of the Dragon. Really dug this album when it came out. I think it was maybe one of my favorite albums of that year too, if I remember correctly. But yeah, definitely a reminder that this Alex Ben era is still going strong. But yeah, you do get some pretty good songs on here, like a Sword Over Damocles is definitely one of my favorites. I also like The Shadow of the Abattoir. Musically, definitely one of my favorites on the album, especially. From Dawn to Decadence, I think is one of the best songs when it comes to the deeper cuts on the album. I think The Phalanx is maybe one of their best album closers. But yeah, another really good album from Trivium. And also, this also came out around the same time as In the Court of the Dragon, but this only came with the magazine, I believe, and it is Dead Men and Dragons. So if you see this, if you come across this, definitely pick it up. If you're a collector for Trivium, CDs, stuff like that. But next we'll be moving to In Waves. This is my number 4 in my ranking, and yeah, still really dig this album to this day. I think it gets some of the band's best deep cuts on this album. Songs like Caustic are The Ties That Bind and Forsake Not the Dream, definitely some of their best deep cuts in general, in my opinion. I'd maybe throw a Skyline Severance in there too, which is definitely maybe one of their heaviest songs. You can also say the same thing for Dust Dismantled. But the title track is definitely one of their big anthems, and for good reason. Definitely really like that song a lot. Definitely one of my favorites on here. But yeah, all around, definitely another really great album from Trivium. But next we're moving to my number 3, and that is The Sin and the Sentence. Absolutely loved this album when it came out. Definitely one of my favorite albums of that year, 2017. And this is, of course, the debut of Alex Ben as the new drummer at the time. And yeah, this was an album that really impressed me when it first came out, and I still think it is, honestly, he's probably one of their best, especially when it comes to a front-to-back album listen. This is definitely one of their best. So many killer songs on here, like the title track, Betrayer, which is definitely a banger, which also has some of my favorite instrumentation on the album. I'd also say the same thing for Sever the Hand, which is one of the deeper cuts. I even like Endless Night, which I remember when this album came out, Endless Night was a song that I remember seeing a lot of people saying this is one of the weaker songs, but honestly, this is maybe one of my favorites. One of the more accessible songs on here, but personally, I really dig it, especially Matt Heafy's vocals. You definitely get a solid hook with the chorus. You also have Thrown Into the Fire, which I think is one of the band's best album closers, honestly. The Revanchist is another standout on the album, in my opinion. Same with Beyond Oblivion. All around, really strong album, definitely one of their best. Now to my number 2, we have an album that I'm sure many people would put out their number 1, but for me it lands here at number 2, Ascendancy. Definitely a really great album. Definitely one of the best second albums in general when it comes to metalcore, I'd say. I mean, of course, they're now celebrating the anniversary of this album, and I'm definitely stoked to hear this album in full when I go see them next week. But yeah, you have some of the band's best work on here. Songs like Rain and Pull Harder on the Strings of Your Martyr. A Gunshot to the Head of Trepidation, which I think is one of their best singles. The Deceived is also pretty good. Definitely one of my favorite deep cuts in general from the band. Same with the title track. The title track, Ascendancy, is probably one of my favorite Trivium songs, if I'm being honest. Absolutely love that song. But yeah, Ascendancy, still a banger of an album all these years later. But now we're moving to my number 1, and also, in my opinion, one of the greatest metal albums of the 2000s. And that is their 4th album, Shogun. Absolutely love this album. I mean, not a single weak track on it. Honestly, this is one of my favorite albums of all time. I'm not going to front. This album is amazing. Again, one of the greatest metal albums of the 2000s, in my opinion, and no one can change my mind on that. I mean, some of my favorite Trivium songs on here, especially with songs like Kurisuck Go Men, which is a contender for maybe being my favorite album opener from the band. You also have Down From the Sky, one of their best singles. Into the Mouth of Hell We March is another one of my favorite songs in general from the band. You also get some of the band's best deep cuts in general on this album. Songs like The Calamity and Of Prometheus and The Crucifix. That song's, to me, having some of Matt's best vocals on the album. I also like Callisto, To a Star in Heaven. But yeah, not a single weak track on this album. Definitely my number 1 for Trivium. But yeah, that is my ranking of the Trivium albums. Let me know your thoughts on my ranking in the comment section below. Let me know what places you agree or disagree with. Let me know, of course, your ranking in the comment section below. Let me know some of your favorite or least favorite songs. And also let me know if you've seen this band live. And if so, let me know what you think. And yeah, all the good stuff. But anyways, thanks for watching. Please leave a comment and a like. Subscribe. Have a nice day and take care.